Hello and welcome back to the channel NPA Discovery that takes you beyond the headlines and into the heartbeat of the stories that shaped our culture. If you're someone who believes that legends aren't just born, but built through hardship, heartbreak, and the courage to be unapologetically real, you're in the right place. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the life of a man whose voice carried through decades, whose presence stirred controversy, and whose death left a silence that still echoes. Today, we uncover the emotional, raw, and complex truth behind George Michael's final days, tragedy, love, and the legacy he left behind. Before we dive in, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support fuels our mission to keep telling the stories that matter. Now, about that title, do I agree with it? Absolutely. George Michael's final years weren't just tragic, they were layered. They were full of love, regret, quiet heroism, and yes, scandal. But they also revealed the man behind the fame. And in many ways, that man was far more interesting than the pop star, George Michael. Even the name sounds iconic, like it was meant to be on a marquee. But what if I told you that wasn't even his real name? Born Georgios Kyriakos Panayiotou in London to a Greek Cypriot immigrant father and an English mother, George's roots were richly multicultural. His father ran a restaurant, a classic immigrant success story, and his mother was a dancer. A home filled with tradition, food, rhythm, and expectations. He was a dreamer from the start, infatuated with pop culture, obsessed with music. In high school, fate introduced him to a young Andrew Ridgeley. Their chemistry was instantaneous. Soon, the duo would become the force behind Wham. A band that seemed like a sugar rush on MTV but had layers many didn't catch. Let's pause here. Imagine two boys in their teens, full of ambition, trying to break into an industry that eats dreams for breakfast. They had no rich uncle, no insider edge. Just talent and hustle. George worked as a DJ and even sang in the London Underground to passers-by. If you've ever doubted how much someone wants it, picture a teenager belting Queen songs to a crowd of rushing strangers, hoping one person hears something worth remembering. Their first band, The Executive, flopped. No label took them seriously. Why? Because they were trying to mimic a reggae style they didn't understand. The rejection stung but taught them something vital: you can't fake your roots. And when they embraced their own style with Wham, the success was explosive. Wham was criticized. Some called them bubblegum pop, others teen idols. But behind the flashy videos and pastel fashion, George Michael was writing, composing, and arranging. He wasn't just the pretty face singing, "Wake me up before you go go," he was the genius behind it. But brilliance has its costs. When Wham dissolved, many thought George would fade. Instead, he transformed. His debut solo album, Faith, was a masterpiece. It won him a Grammy and featured 5 #1 singles. But controversy followed like a shadow. I Want Your Sex was too provocative for radio. The video, too steamy for daytime TV. But instead of bowing to censorship, George leaned into it. And oddly enough, that defiance made him even more compelling. Still, his public image was carefully curated. While his lyrics suggested sensuality and personal torment, he was guarded about one thing: his sexuality. And that secret would come to define a chapter of his life that was both beautiful and devastating. One of the most tender stories in George's life is his relationship with Anselmo Felipe, a Brazilian designer he met at a concert in Rio. It was love at first sight, but within 6 months, Anselmo tested positive for HIV. George, who hadn't come out to his family or fans, grieved in silence. The 2 years they had together were a quiet sanctuary for George, a rare moment where he didn't have to perform. When Anselmo passed, George was shattered. He wrote "Jesus to a Child" as a tribute, a song so raw it became a spiritual anthem for anyone who has ever loved and lost. Most people didn't know its true meaning. But for George, it was a diary entry turned into melody. And yet, even that heartbreak didn't slow the chaos. He battled record labels, substance abuse, and depression. His arrest in 1998 for a lewd act in a public restroom was humiliating, but it also forced a reckoning. He came out as gay. And then he did something bold. He reclaimed the narrative. In the music video for his single, Outside, George mocked the incident, dressed as a cop, and turned scandal into satire. The police officer who arrested him tried to sue for $10 million. The case was thrown out. It was George's way of saying, I may be wounded, but I'm not ashamed. Post-reckoning, George Michael didn't hide. He used the very stage that once judged him to take ownership of his truth. His artistry deepened. His interviews grew more honest. And behind the scenes, his generosity began to shine through in ways the public rarely saw. Take, for example, his anonymous donations. After watching an episode of a UK game show where a contestant sought funds for fertility treatment, George secretly reached out and paid for her IVF. She gave birth to a healthy child, and never even met her benefactor. It wasn't a publicity stunt. It was pure kindness. George regularly volunteered at homeless shelters without press coverage, and once tipped a waitress £5,000 after learning she was saving up for nursing school. His love for nurses ran deep. They had cared for his dying mother, and he never forgot their compassion. But even amid these moments of grace, his personal battles raged on. He was caught driving under the influence. He admitted to smoking 25 joints a day. He spiraled, not in silence, but with tabloid cameras never far behind. In 2011, George nearly died from pneumonia. He was in a coma, underwent a tracheotomy, and emerged with foreign accent syndrome, a rare condition that left him speaking in a different intonation. It was surreal. And yet, he laughed it off in interviews, calling it just another twist in the madness of my life. Post-reckoning, George Michael didn't hide. He used the very stage that once judged him to take ownership of his truth. His artistry deepened. His interviews grew more honest. And behind the scenes, his generosity began to shine through in ways the public rarely saw. Take, for example, his anonymous donations. After watching an episode of a UK game show where a contestant sought funds for fertility treatment, George secretly reached out and paid for her IVF. She gave birth to a healthy child, and never even met her benefactor. It wasn't a publicity stunt. It was pure kindness. George regularly volunteered at homeless shelters without press coverage, and once tipped a waitress £5,000 after learning she was saving up for nursing school. His love for nurses ran deep. They had cared for his dying mother, and he never forgot their compassion. But even amid these moments of grace, his personal battles raged on. He was caught driving under the influence. He admitted to smoking 25 joints a day. He spiraled, not in silence, but with tabloid cameras never far behind. In 2011, George nearly died from pneumonia. He was in a coma, underwent a tracheotomy, and emerged with foreign accent syndrome, a rare condition that left him speaking in a different intonation. It was surreal. And yet, he laughed it off in interviews, calling it just another twist in the madness of my life. And then came the will. 3 years after his passing, the public finally learned how George wanted his legacy to be handled. Shockingly, many close to him were left out. Andrew Ridgeley, his longtime friend and Wham co-founder, received nothing. Fadi, the man who was by his side at the end, also found himself excluded. The will left most of his estate to immediate family and several friends from the 1980s. People were stunned. But perhaps that's the point. George Michael never lived by public expectation. His decisions, whether in music, love, or legacy, were often private, unpredictable, and deeply personal. We often think of celebrities as headlines, but George Michael was more than scandal, more than fame. He was a layered human being, a son, a lover, a fighter, a philanthropist, a wounded soul with a voice that could heal others even when he couldn't always heal himself. And maybe that's why he still matters. Because in a world where so many wear masks, George Michael, through all his contradictions, dared to be real. He broke the mold of the pop star. He gave us permission to feel, to cry, to dance, and to be imperfect. So as we remember him, not just for faith, or careless whisper, or freedom, but for the man behind the music, let's also remember what he taught us, that love is worth the risk. That pain can fuel purpose. That being misunderstood doesn't mean you're wrong. And that even a whisper can change the world.